Hello and welcome to this video where the topic is spots, blemishes and distractions via the clone tool and the healing brushes in Photoshop. My name's Barry Beckham. Just before we begin, can I tell you that it's probably worth watching our video called Spot Removal in Adobe Camera Raw at some stage, because there's more than one way to deal with spots, blemishes and distractions. I'd like to begin in Photoshop and show you a before and after image, because I think this image is a very good example of the power and scope of the tools I'm about to demonstrate. This is Bondi Beach in Australia on a lovely sunny day, but the crowds of people we often see there seem to have deserted the place. Well, not exactly. Here you can see the beach as I originally captured it, and I use this image as an example to show what can be done with these tools and just a little patience. But the time taken here doesn't reflect more than about 15-20 minutes maximum, and yet quite a bit of work was done. Now, how am I able to show you the before and after so easily? Well, let me open up my layers on the right hand side here, because this image is actually made up of two layers. If I turn the top layer off here, which contain all of the repairs that I did, then you see the original image. If I turn off the original image and just the repairs, it all looks rather messy. But when we see them together, we get a great result. And this is a great way to use these tools, by using a new blank layer, and we'll come to that in a moment or two. If you come with me over to the other side of the screen on the left, we have three tools that we're going to use in this demonstration. We have the old, and I say that with some affection, the old clone tool. If I click and hold, there's a pattern stamp tool as well, but the one we're interested in is the clone stamp tool. That's been around for many years, but I have to say there's two other tools here, one called the spot healing brush and the healing brush, which have become so good I find that in practical use I rarely use the clone tool anymore. If you've seen my video called Spot Removal in Adobe Camera Raw, then you're going to recognize this image, and you'll also recognize all of the dust spots in the sky, both at the right and many on the left hand side too. Now, when we fix these in Adobe Camera Raw, any fixes we make always remain live, meaning we can always go back to a repair. If we decide later it's not quite as good as we would like, we can adjust it or even remove it completely. I'd like to have a similar flexibility working in Photoshop. Yes, we do have an undo history, so that does give us a degree of protection. But I like to work with a new blank layer, so I'm going to suggest, especially when we're relatively new to these tools, that we always use a new blank layer. We can create a new blank layer from the bottom of the layers palette, the icon just to the left of the bin. When we click it, we create the new layer, and the new layer will be placed above the layer we had selected previously, which was our background image. What we're going to do here is use this layer to place all the repairs on, just as I showed a few moments ago with the Bondi Beach image. So let's start with the clone tool. I think first of all I need to zoom in on the top right of this image. When we looked at this in Adobe Camera Raw, I suggested that we get the image at least 100% in size, and I think the same advice is good here too. We can do that by double clicking the zoom tool, holding the spacebar, click and drag up to the top right corner. There we see all the offending little dust mites that we have to deal with. So let's go to the toolbox and pick up the clone tool. We just want the basic clone tool. We do not want the pattern stamp tool. We have a series of options along the top of the screen. For the work I'm going to do here, I'm going to leave these two set at 100%. But I do need to adjust this option here, because at the moment by default it says current layer. But what we're going to do by the inclusion of the new blank layer over in the layers palette is we're going to copy pixels from here and put all of the repairs on there. So the option we need is this one, current and below. So now I need to select a clone point, because the clone tool needs to know where we're going to take the pixels from to repair the little mark we want to repair. Let's take this one here. I'll make my brush just a little bit bigger using those square bracket keys. But here is where we have to use a bit of common sense, I suppose. We need to take the repair from the right place. For example, if I hold the Alt key and I sample right at the top in the blue sky and try to paste it over here, you can see the obvious problem. Control Z, shortcut keys for undo, will soon put that right. So it makes sense that if I'm going to clone over the top of this, I need the same sort of pixels to do so. So I need to clone close by, something like that. So when I touch over the top, you can see we get a good repair. Now unless we do anything else, every time I touch one of these, if you look to the left, you'll see the little cross is telling us where the repair is coming from. Now in most cases, as you can see here, I don't need to change my source point. The little cross or the plus sign is telling you where it's drawing the pixels to repair from. But in most cases, I can just live with that and move around here and do all the repairs that I want. Now I'm looking for somewhere where perhaps I need to change tack just a little bit, and perhaps over here you can see we've got a line of cloud here, so maybe I would change the clone source and maybe take the clone from there, maybe just to make it look pretty good once we've done that and we move out to look at the picture full screen. But for most of them, just sample alongside and we're going to get a reasonably good repair. Now there's another reason why we can use this new blank layer, and it was what I did earlier on, because we can turn it on and off. We can then appreciate more just how damaging some little marks, blemishes or distractions can be in our images, particularly if they're lots of tiny highlights. So it's a pretty easy tool to use, but the tool that's really taking over from that, in my view, is the Spot Healing Brush. Now we'll find that just above. This is the one, Spot Healing Brush. There's a little box here that says sample all layers. Generally speaking, that's going to be unticked, I think, by default. So for the same reasons as I explained a few moments ago, we need to sample all layers so that any repairs we do, the repairs are taken from the image, but they're placed on our new blank layer. Now all we need to do with the Spot Healing Brush is to just get the brush the appropriate size and click, and Photoshop will do the rest. So if I just move at my normal pace for a moment, you can see that it's not exactly a tough job. As I said in one of the other videos, yeah, sure, it can get a little bit tedious at times when we've got a lot of these marks around the image, but you can see that it doesn't actually take a great deal of time to put them right. And I'm going to suggest that 99 times out of 100, this Spot Healing Brush is going to do the job. Now, if you look at the top of the screen, we've got some options for this brush. By default, it's set to Content Aware. Once again, I'm going to say that I've never used any of these other options. This meets all my photographic needs, and I guess it's probably going to meet yours too. So working on this new blank layer over on the right hand side does have some advantages. First of all, we never actually make a change to the image below. It remains exactly as we started. All of the repairs are on the new layer, which does give us the opportunity, if one of these repairs was a little more difficult than the others, I could erase them and have another go. If I turn this off for a moment, there you can see all the repairs I've done. If one of these wasn't looking too good and I wanted to remove it, well, I could do that. I could go to my erasure tool, pick up an appropriate brush, I could take that one away, I could come back here, I could reselect whatever tool it was I wanted to use, and I could have another go at it. Is there a downside to working like this? Well, not really, but there is something you need to be aware of. If once you've got all the repairs on this layer, if you selected this image, for example, and decided that using some of the other tools in Photoshop, which we won't go into at the moment, like the levels that you wanted to darken down the image a little bit, you can see the obvious problem, because now we're only making a change to this layer and it's not going to affect the spots. So the simple thing to do is, once we get to a certain point and we're happy with the work we've done, well, then we can merge these layers together, either by merging visible or flattening the image. Then if we did want to make a change to the density of the image, then of course all of the repairs are changed as well. Now the spot healing brush will not only deal effectively with spots, blemishes, but also distractions too, much like we saw in our demonstration in Adobe Camera Raw. But if we stay with the technique of placing a new blank layer above our original, I'll go down and do that, because what we've got here is a couple of lines, power cables in the sky there, maybe a telephone cable coming across this picture, and it would be nice to remove those. So I'm going to select my zoom tool with Control and the space bar. You can see what happens. The tool that I currently have, which is my spot healing brush, is just temporarily suspended. I can click and drag to raise the size of the image up, and then I can select my brush size. Now the good thing about the healing brush is, once we set sample all layers from the options at the top of the screen, that little box will remain ticked until we decide to untick it. But what I like about it is, if I just click on that edge there, you'll see how it protects the edge, and I can just work my way around here. I'll do it a little bit at a time, because you can get carried away with these, and they do work quite well in large areas sometimes, but sometimes it's just little dots here and there. But if you want to go further, click, hold the shift key, move a short distance and click again, and click again, and click again, and we can easily do a series of repairs. But look what happens when I do the repair right on that edge. It's protected the edge. Now I can move away, hold the shift key, move a short distance and click, click, click. I'll go back and touch that and do that one, scroll to the top, I'll do that one, and I think we've got a pretty good repair. But once again, we've not actually changed the image at all. We don't have to amalgamate these two layers until we're happy that our work is seamless and is never going to be seen. And in that instance, we can then decide, if we wish to flatten the two layers together. What I've done here is to open up that original Bondi Beach image, and I've placed a new blank layer over the top for speed. And I think we'll make a start with the spot healing brush, and I'm going to zoom in to the sign over here. I'm going to be a little bit ambitious here. I'm going to make my brush a bit bigger. I'm going to paint over the entire sign. Apart from the pole, we'll do that in a moment. And now I'll make the brush slightly smaller maybe. Go down to the bottom. See how the edge has been protected there even though I went right from the top to the bottom. And of course we would need to deal with the shadow as well. If you do get a little faux pas like I saw just there, just touch the area again and 9 times out of 10 you'll get a good result. Now if I was being really super critical, maybe I've got a little problem here. It's not much and I doubt whether anyone would see it, but it does give me the opportunity to say that if the spot healing brush doesn't work as well as you would like, then that may be the time to turn to the healing brush. They're grouped together, so click and hold and select it. Now the only difference here is that the healing brush needs a clone source point. Just like the clone tool, we need to tell the software where to take the repair from. We also make sure that we're going to clone to our new blank layer, so we need to change this to current and below, and remember, once we do that, it'll stay there until we change it back. So for example, if I were to clone from this area here and paint over here, I could get a slightly better edge to that rolling wave. And there we have a beautiful repair. Now working with our new blank layer as we are, I can go and turn that layer off, and there's the sign because we've never touched any pixels on the basic image at all. So my advice is that most of the time my first choice is going to be the spot healing brush. Let's take a look at that crane at the top. One thing we've got to do is to deal with the ropes coming down. So see, when I touch that, it makes sure that the edge along the roof is not affected. So now I can do that part. Maybe I can make a slightly bigger brush and do this part. Couple of little marks there I can see, but a bit there. Maybe let's do the back of the crane. I'll make my brush slightly bigger and I'll come down to the edge, I think. Now to be honest, I could try to fix that too, but I really don't think I need to. Now to fix an image like this, we just treat one section at a time and we work slowly and carefully, and most of the time we're going to get a pretty good result. If the spot healing brush lets me down, then I would reach for the healing brush and I would maybe clone from one side to another. Let's zoom in over here. So I could take a clone source from the edge there and then paint it up and over there to remove that guy. Maybe I would take the clone source from the other side this time and touch a few times, and if it doesn't work straight away, take another clone source point. Just take your time, and I am rushing a little bit because I'm always conscious that I'm taking up valuable video time and sometimes it's counterproductive. Let's try one or two of these over here, much easier. As you can see, we just take our time and gradually we can do almost any repairs we wish. Now I was just about to bring this video to a close when I spotted something that I really must say. What I can do with the healing brush, this is the one that requires us to take a clone source point. The spot healing brush, we just select and click on the area we want to repair and Photoshop will do the rest. With the healing brush we have to take a clone source. So if I took a clone source from, say, up in the sky on the right hand side, when I come down on the sand and start to paint, surprisingly it doesn't paint blue. But we can see where I'm trying to effect a repair simply because the texture from the sky isn't the same as the sand. But wherever I click on the sand, can you see the cross up at the top right in the sky? That's where we're taking the pixels from. What I'd like to remind you is In most circumstances, we're going to want this little box ticked. It's called aligned. So if I take a clone source point now and I clone to the left, you can see where the clone source point is coming from, where the little plus sign is. When I come down here and do the same thing, you can see what it's doing now. It's taking the clone repair point from where the cross is, and that allows the repair to be much more effective. Now I've just switched back to the spot healing brush. Both of these brushes give us the opportunity to change the brush, but I'm going to suggest that if you don't touch the brush at all and use the default one that Photoshop provides, that's going to meet all of your needs. The other thing I'll just draw your attention to when I've got the spot healing brush tool selected, we do have some options at the top of the screen, and one of those, which is clicked by default, is content aware, which is the subject of another video. The content aware technique and tools are very powerful, but here with the spot healing brush we get it almost as a default, and it works a treat. Now, did you enjoy this video? What, you didn't? Oh, then why not drop me an email and tell me what it was that spoilt your enjoyment?